So, Chico, we've been friends for a long time. I've known you for a long time, and it's so great to be in your home. And welcome to the Millhouse podcast.
Yes, thank you and welcome to my home.
Well, it's an honor and it's a privilege to
Thank you.
be have been your friend for a number of years. And so, let's just go ahead and get started. What I want to do, you were inducted into the Fishing Hall of Fame in 2016.
Yes.
You know what an honor and what a privilege. What did this mean to you?
It means a lot for several reasons, but one of the reasons is when you're giving such an honor, one of the most important things is who gives you that honor. And I think a lot of the IGFA, what they've done, the people that work in it, most of them anglers and so on. So when they inducted me, I was just thrilled. I couldn't stand it.
Well, your story, your acceptance speech was just riveting. You spoke for about 30 minutes or so talking about your life in Cuba
Yes.
to the States and what fishing has meant to you. And if you don't mind, why don't you just kind of recap a little bit about your life, fishing as a young man and what happened in 1959 when your family came to Miami. Let's just go ahead and have you start those early steps.
All right. I was born in Cuba to a family of fishermen, so I was very lucky. I started fishing with my dad. It was handline fishing. The handline in those days, in 1946 or so, was white, bright cotton line that the fish could see very well, at least according to my dad. So we dyed that white cotton with the mangrove roots to make it brown, so the fish wouldn't see it. Frankly, it looked like an anchor rope, but the fish wouldn't see it. And I started fishing handline. When I was even younger, I wasn't allowed to fish. I was like 4 years old, 3, but they'd bring me in the boat. And what they did is when they caught snapper and little grouper and like that, if they were too small to keep, they'd put them on a pail of water. And I would play with the fish for a while, and then we would send them home to their mommy and daddy, and like that. Eventually, when I was about 6, it was decided I was ready. So I started fishing with this handline and caught, with bait and so on, caught all these snapper and grouper and grunts and so on. In 1952, my dad came to United States for a while. Politically, he had to leave Cuba, and we lived in the United States for about 2 years. During that time, I was around 12 years old, more or less, I discovered spinning tackle. So 2 years later, when I came back to Cuba, I was no longer fishing with a hand line. I was above that. My dad thought I was doing it wrong because I couldn't feel the strike with your hand like a hand liner, but I didn't care. I was using lures. I was casting jigs in the mouth of a river, catching snook and baby tarpon and so on. So I stayed with the spinning rod. My dad made a lot of money on real estate in the middle, late 50s. So soon, besides racing on a 2-seater 190 Mercedes-Benz, I was fishing more out of boats, and my father bought a yacht. And for some reason that I don't remember, he couldn't find a captain that he liked there. So he came to Miami and found this fellow, Don Roban. And Don spoke some Spanish and everything else. We were cool. He was the new captain. I took him to the mouth of the Jibacoa River to cast my jig and catch snook and show him how it was done here in Cuba. And my goodness, he pulled out of a tube a 9.5-foot bamboo bat and kill fly rod and started casting for snook with that. And he caught snook. But the thing was, I saw the line in the air. I was enamored. I'm a romantic guy, and this was me. So I started trying to get fly rods in Cuba, which there were none, but we brought some from the States and so on. And one of the things we brought was another Orvis 9.5 foot for a GAF, which is like an 8 weight. By the way, I still have the rod upstairs in the garage, and every winter during Christmas, I put a line on and I cast it, and I can still cast 80 feet with it or 85 feet with it with no problem. The loop is bigger, but she's wonderful. And I keep her there. And when you open the tube, you smell the wood and the varnish and everything else.
Wow, that's really interesting. It would be like me having my first pair of downhill skis, at the age of 13 or whatever.
Yes. So I started fishing with it. I caught snook and like that. I never landed tarpon for a while. Eventually, south of Havana, there's a town, Batavano, which has a lot of commercial fishermen. And what you did there, you got a rowboat, you hired the boat, and you rowed maybe 500 feet or so, where the shrimp boats have, and even the boats that caught a lot of snapper and grouper and like that, were cleaning fish and cleaning shrimp and all that. And where they were, of course, there was a ball of tarpon so tight it was black. If you cast a lure or a bait in the center of that hole, you'd hook a fish immediately. He'd cut you off as he swam through the other tarpon. The line would cut you off. You'd have to cast on the sides and so on. But anyway, there were tarpon there from 15 pounds or so to 100. I brought my fly rod, hooked one, and landed the fish. He's about 20 pounds, which is on the photograph behind me. I don't remember how long it took, but I was high sticking it for all I had. I was looking cool. The rod was bent, get a camera, So that was the beginning of another love affair with a fish that jumped, was beautiful, made long runs, and so on. So I fished with a fly rod and spinning rod till 1959. Actually, till 1958, December 31st. That day, Batista left. Castro was in the mountains. It took him 6 days to walk all the way to Havana and take over the country. And my father left because he knew Castro and he knew things were going to be good. And we visited in Miami and came back and so on. But eventually that year, 1959, we decided we had to live here.
And that's when Castro took over.
Yes, 1959. It was the 6th of January. Anyway, the way I came to this country was on that 190 SL Mercedes-Benz. There was a ferry. I put my mother in the car. It's a 2-seater automobile. And she puts her jewels and all that, and I put my jewels, which were basically the fly rods and so on, and a Patek Philippe watch, if I may add. And landed in Key West the next morning, rode to Miami. I'm still here 60 years later. I had the Mercedes for about 2 years. Flip Pilot and I, and Little John and I, would go to the Tamiami Trail to fish for the snook that always popped the shorelines there. And I drive at 110 miles an hour flat out over there. And I still remember driving, I believe, with Flip one time, and it was raining, and I'd slow down to 195. And Flip said, "Chico, it's raining." And I said, "I know, I slowed it down a bit." Only young people, and he agreed, "Oh, okay, no, we're cool."
We're good.
We weren't cool. We were going like a bat out of hell with the rain pouring. But that's what you do with your young. I know you know that. You're bulletproof. You know it, that kind of thing. So I came to this country. Miami was minute. Within a week, I met in a tackle shop Bill Curtis, who was not guiding then. He was a photographer and helped well-known photographers and so on. And we talked for a little while, and I told him snook was my favorite fish. It still is, Andy. It still is. And Bill said, "I know we can catch snook." really? Well, I'd like to go. When? He said, right now, I know. Really, where? The Tamiami Trail. So I said, let's go. I have my rod here. So I got to make a phone call first. You can't just go to the trail like that. Okay. He called Rocky Weinstein in Everglades City. Rocky lived there. He knew what bridge of all the Tamiami Trail the snook were popping. It was Bridge 50. We got in the car. We drove over there. Rocky was waiting for us. There was snook popping all over the shoreline. We took 30 fish in one afternoon without thinking about it in those days.
Well, the fishing in that time of year, or 1959 in the early 60s, I can't even imagine how good it was. And we'll get to that. But I'd like to first, before we get into the fishing in Miami and your pals, let's go back to Cuba briefly.
Okay.
You told me a story one time about how you guys used to fly kites out of your building.
Oh, my goodness.
I want to hear the kite story. And you met a friend. Tell me that story.
Yes. As my father made more money, we moved to Vedado section right by the Almendares River. And I was about 10 or 11, 12, 11. I forget. Before we went to United States, maybe 10. And this is the first time where the neighborhood was so quiet and there weren't traffic that I could actually go by myself outside the house and play by myself. This was freedom. I mean, I was beside myself. I walked out, there were kids gambling with marbles, playing marble. I learned to do that with tops, a variety of things. We made our own transportation. If you bought your stuff, a bicycle or something, you were square. You were not cool. What you did is you made a scooter with two planks of 2x6 wood, and for wheels, you took an old roller skate, you split it in half, the first two wheels up front, the last two wheels on the back, and in the angle of the what would you call the wood that's vertical and horizontal, we'd make a little box there, and you'd carry your marbles and you carry your stuff, your kites, whatever. And that's how you transport yourself, because sometimes the action of marbles or whatever we were doing was 7, 8, 10 blocks away. You wanted to get there quick. Anyway, during the spring, when the wind blew hard, what we did was fly kites. Again, you didn't buy a kite. We made our own kites. We made it out of light wood, and we call it, translating, Chinese paper. And then it was never tight, it was wrinkled. Then you wet your hands, you sprinkle them on the paper, it shrunk, and you had a beautiful kite. But what we really wanted to do was have a kite fight, which they still have in China, they still have in India, and they still have in Cuba, by the way. What you did is you put razor blades on the tail of the kite. You took a Gillette with two edges, you snapped it, broke it. Then you took a heavy toothpick and you put one blade vertical to the other or perpendicular to the other. And you had several of these toothpicks with the blades, and you put them on the tail. When you were flying, you could get the kite, if you were good, to go right or left. And if you could get the tail on the other guy's line, you cut him off. On a real windy day, if you were high on a building, right on the top, remember there's no snow here, the tops are flat. You can actually stand on them. The other kite cut off would go back 2 blocks on a windy day, landed past the Malecon, even on the water. You'd lose your kite. On a bad day, you'd lose several kites. And we would fight all the time. This was a thing of honor. So at one time, flying out of the building that we used to fly, many of us, we were a gang, here comes this black kite. Instead of a string for a tail and little bows, he had a ribbon. And we used to call it the snake. And this person, which we never saw, he flew out of a little, kind of a darkish tower, and we never saw the person. He'd cut us off every time.
Like the red baron, but the black baron.
Yes, that was a black bear. So sometimes we'd be flying, he wasn't there. Other time he'd come. I mean, we made our own kites. Believe me, we fought him. I didn't take a back step, but he or she didn't either. So never could beat him.
So this person you didn't see. So you're in a building, and he had the kite.
He had it in another building. So the story is that as I got older and I got more into fly fishing, and the kite thing was tapering off. One day, there were less of us doing stuff. Kids have, started playing baseball in Cuba was good, soccer. I was first baseman. We were leaving that. We were outgrowing it, I guess that's the word. And I had a big yellow kite that I had made, maybe 2.5 feet. She was slow, but she was beautiful. I'd fly her way up there. She couldn't move fast enough, so I didn't put any blades on her. I call her Matilda. And I took Matilda out and got up in the tower by myself, in top of the building by myself. And I was just watching it maybe one more time because I knew I wasn't going to fly it anymore. She's way up there, and all of a sudden, here comes a snake. And Matilda is slow, she's heavy, she's unarmed, she's dead. She's dead. And the thing came in fast and pulled up beside me. I'm sitting there. I can't drop fast enough. I can't bump him. There's nothing.
You can't say no because the snake kills everything it sees.
Yes. There's nothing I can do. I sit there, but sad because it's blowing hard, and Matilda's going to land on the water in the Malecon somewhere, or on the street where cars are driving through. And the thing stood there beside me and stood there. I think he's just laughing at me. And after a while, it moved out and he left, and he didn't cut me off. And I wish I had met that person. I think it was an older person, but I never did. I took Matilda home. The youngest of the gang was still flying kites, and I gave him Matilda, and I never flew a kite again.
That's an amazing story, because in those early years, you really did not have a whole lot like the kids here in this country and what we see here. And there you played a simple game, but it was such a big part of your lives.
Yeah, you made your own kite, you made your own scooter. Now you buy everything. My grandchildren have so many toys, they need a room for the toys. My heart is in that. And my son heart isn't in it, but he tells me society's such today that you can't get away. You get a birthday and they bring a truck full of toys. It's a different world. But yes, we made our toys.
Looking, reading some other stuff that Flip and everybody has spoken about you. I mean, you come from a very, very big world of fishing royalty, but I consider you, as do a lot of other people, the Renaissance man in a lot of ways. So in your background, all these things you've done and you've become an expert at: pistol, marksman, archer, tennis player. I know a little bit about tennis.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
A jazz historian, outdoor writer, photographer, cook, canoeist, all these things, fly caster, inventor. But tell me about your expertise, about being an expert with the scent of a woman.
Oh, the scent of the woman.
I hear you speak about women.
I love ladies. To me, women are ladies. All of them. There's some I don't want to talk to. There's some I may not like. But I came from Cuba, and we were descendant from northern Spain. And you opened doors, and you walked on the outside of the sidewalk. And one of the things that has been good for me in meeting ladies and in dating and so on is that I have the advantage over many men that I like to talk to the woman. I don't go talking wondering what I'm going to do later. An interesting woman is a very exciting human being, because while I have friends that are very interesting, she has a different way of looking at something, a different point of view. Even a film that we both like, Casablanca, and I'll have a lady tell me why she likes it, and I have to say sometimes, geez, I didn't think of that. So it's a very interesting person. And when you talk to a woman, an intelligent woman, she realizes you want to talk to her and you're enjoying the thing, I think you're more likely to get to know her.
And that's the beauty of women. They bring on a completely different perspective. How hard has it been since Marilyn passed 5 years ago? You were married a long time.
Yes, we're married 49 years. She died of ALS. It's been very hard because you get used to it. And now you're alone in the house. I date and so on, all this stuff. But it's been incredibly hard. Yes, indeed.
But your son has probably filled a lot of that void. You're fishing. I know you guys are still passionate about fishing and being together.
Yeah, my son is my closest person, for sure. We tell each other everything. And
too much sometimes?
So too much. Sometimes I'll tell him something in the dating and that. Do I need to know that for this? Do I need to know that for the story? Well, I thought I'd brag a little, whatever. But I have two wonderful grandchildren, and I'm Grandpa Chico, and they own me. They want my car, and I'd hand them the car and let them go with it. And just tell them, be careful driving it. There's a Hell's Babe in the back. Bye.
Yeah, right.
But yes, it's been very easy. Also, my brother who lives 5 blocks away, and I can call him and so on. Has been very good.
That's great. Let's go back now to Miami. You get to Key West. You didn't spend much time there in 1959. Your family had to get out of Cuba because of Castro, and he was going to take everything. I mean, what was the mindset about leaving and that whole process?
My dad
and the heartbreak. I can't even imagine the heartbreak.
Oh, you leave everything behind. My dad didn't think that Castro would last. He thought he'd be going back as he had done before in other situations. So he thought a couple years or something he'd go back, and never thought he'd last his whole life. But he did. My dad never went back to Cuba. So very difficult. For my dad in particular, it was difficult because he had made money, and now he was in a country that he didn't speak the language. And I think even worse yet, he didn't know the customs, he didn't know the culture. And he didn't want to know it. He liked the Cuban culture. And
he was Cuban.
He was Cuban, and he couldn't convert. In my case, I learned English. I already spoke English pretty well. I learned English real quick. Dating, I found there were no chaperones. Jazz was here. I was home.
Right.
I was cool in the pool, and everybody. I have friends that fly fish. I had little John Emery, Norman Duncan, who I see all the time. Flip, of course, Flip Pallet. So it was easier for me. For him, it was very difficult. Now, my mom, she was very open-minded. She learned some English. She loved Nat King Cole. She loved Sinatra, but mainly she loved Nat King Cole. She could sing all those words, the lyrics to all those songs. And by the way, my mother had a very heavy accent. She was older and very heavy English accent. But if she sang Nat King Cole's Too Young, there was no accent. And she would sing that, and then she would come back, that was pretty good. Yeah, that was very, very good, Mom. But there was no accent when she did that, or Frank Sinatra's songs or something like that. I don't know why she got in.
She had that ability.
Yeah,
an actress.
Yeah, she could do that. She lived to 102 and a half, and 6 weeks before it died, she was still sharp. She still had Cuban meals, black beans and rice, palomilla steak, blah, blah, blah. And she drank scotch, but only on the rocks, very little rocks. And she never got upset. And if you were fixing her a drink, but you poured water in it, which she wouldn't like, she wouldn't say no, she wouldn't be upset or anything. She'd say, "Oh, Andy, I see you're fixing a drink for yourself too." She wasn't going to be upset because she wasn't going to have it.
Yeah, she'd just go make her own.
Yes.
The way she liked it.
The way she liked it.
Did you have a strict family?
A what?
A strict family? They were very successful. Did they like keep you within a small boundary of your freedom when you were younger and your wildness, if you had any
Uh,
wildness?
um,
Where did that discipline
my
come from?
my
Because they see
wildest,
you as
yeah,
a disciplined person.
okay, my wildest. My dad and my mom had some control. My dad, deep down, sometimes he would just, without mom knowing, let the wildness go. So this was cool. But we did have some things. Dad and mom believed that a family, whatever they do at dinner time, you don't watch TV, you sit and you talk at dinner time. The family, that was the time the family got together. Also, you weren't going to sit at dinner time with a T-shirt. You know, you put a shirt on, button shirt, and in wintertime, um, a long sleeve shirt wasn't necessary, but it was encouraged.
Right. Interesting.
That kind of a thing. And Maryland, coming from fairly strict family to in very northern Pennsylvania, another world from mine. Also, the parents thought the same way. You sat and you talked at the time. So when Marilyn and I had Stephen, we sat on that table that's sitting there, which came from her home in Pennsylvania, and we would talk, and we wouldn't turn the television on or anything else. What's happening in school, even if Stephen and I had talked about fishing some and blah blah blah, but so I believe on that. I believe one moment where in today's world you're not texting, okay, while
Right.
you're talking,
Right.
while you're having supper with the family. After all, it's just a few minutes that you're talking.
You know, do you think that this might be very similar, having a family and being influenced with a strict right and wrong way to live your life? Do you think that's similar to like bone fishing, that is such a demanding fish, and it made it easier to become a philosopher? You said in a video, fishing, you have to be a philosopher. You have to convince yourself as to what you're doing, and being the difficulties of what you're trying to accomplish. It's difficult, so we have to philosophize as to why we do this.
Yes, I do, and I think that mindset of being a philosopher even goes to the point that, I mean, when you bonefish first, Andy, you've given up eating the fish. You're not going to eat, and you're not going to catch anything to eat. And I like to eat fish. You may not catch anything all day, or hook one fish all day. I mean, think about it. You could have gone to the Patch Reef and hooked 40 fish, 15 of which you take home. You got to philosophize. It's windy. Maybe you have a bad day, Andy, and you're not doing so well, and the wind is coming from your casting arm, and you got to make a back cast, and you're not doing well, and you catch nothing. And you're a great angler, and you have a very good boat, and maybe you have a friend or a guide that's tremendous, and you catch nothing. But you philosophize that. Hey, I went bone fishing. I was out in the flats. I saw bonefish tailing. I saw stingrays. I saw an eagle fly above me. I was in the bonefish world. I was hunting for bonefish, and you're happy. You went bonefish. It isn't, I didn't catch anything today. You're above that.
Right.
You philosophize that, and I'm very comfortable with that, and I know you are too.
Not all the time.
I gave you the best I could.
Yeah, you're the best. I'm telling you. It's some days, you know, you've done this and you spend a lot of time, and many times you're out there, you don't even see anything.
That's
and
true.
That gets so aggravating. And I understand the whole philosophy aspect, because we're trying to make this balance as to why we do these things. And that's where passion comes into play.
I agree. Fully agree.
Your heart. And that's why we get so connected to this world. And so let's go back to Miami. You guys, the royalty of saltwater anglers, and the fact that I believe, and I call you royalty, the royal family, Stu Apt, yourself, and Flip, Norman Duncan, even though he was not quite as famous as you guys, I think, you know, but he was significant.
Oh, very much so. He just didn't stay in the fishing world. He was an engineer. He helped build the bridges in the Florida Keys, but they were wood and whatever
Right.
before, and restored. So he didn't stay in that world. That's why he didn't become as well known as Flip and I are. But Yes,
He was
he
there.
came up with all kinds of things.
Tell me about some of your early inventions. You know,
What
your bridge lines, etc.
the bridge lines. What happened was that basically in the early 50s, I mean the late 50s and early 60s, we didn't have any money. You could go out on a date for $8, but we didn't have $8 sometimes. And so we wanted to fish and date. The order of preference changed with what we did the last time. See, so if we were dating, now we wanted to fish. We were fishing, we wanted to date. But at any rate, we found that there were big tarpon in the bridges. If you fish those big tarpon from the bridge, we didn't have a boat to say the least. You hooked them, you lost them. You weren't going to land an 80-pound tarpon on an 8-weight rod with 12-pound tippet, which is what we did today, or 20-pound tippet. He'd make a couple jumps to thrill us, and then he'd go under the bridge, and you lose your fly line. That's the end of that tune. Couldn't afford to lose several fly lines in there.
Right.
So in the meantime, we were thinking how to make a fly line. We ended up taking 200-pound mono, stretching it between two cloth drying poles, you know, that to dry your clothes, and we sanded down the taper of a weight forward line. What we didn't realize then is that what made the line cast the fly was the weight. This sloppy casting that we did to make the cast, it wasn't presentation. I mean, we cast flies, big flies, to imitate the mullet. I mean, there was no artificial material then, so a whole chicken gave its life to make that fly. To cast that, we just needed weight. You didn't need a front taper and running line. We could have tied it really to 200 or 300-pound mono and make probably better cast. The line would have been a little heavier, but we didn't know that. So we made the thing. It took forever. We probably had no finger in the fingertip. We had probably no digit.
Right.
Yeah, we could have done a more profitable job. But at any rate, we would take these lines. We soon found that they cast okay. We put pure silicone on it. They cast well. But if you put it in the reel, you'd never take it out. It'd come out like a spring, and it would never straighten out again. So
memory.
Memory. So we couldn't put it on any reel. So with pipe cleaners, I don't think Flip smoked a pipe, but John Emery, Norman, and I were pipe smoker. I still have my Dunhill straight grain and everything else. Anyway, we would make big rolls and wrap the line on loops that were maybe 3 feet around.
Like a big yo-yo.
Yes.
Big Cuban yo-yo, maybe?
Not on a yo-yo, no, without anything. We just make the loops and
with the pipe cleaners hold that loop together.
Yeah, they hold that loop together. And we'd make 10 of those lines each. And we'd carrying on our side, holding the loop by our waist and the fly rod on the other, go down the bridge, put one of these lines on, hook a tarpon, promptly lose it, put another fly line on. And so on. So we could afford to lose the lines. Obviously, before you ask me, we never landed any tarpon. If we'd have done it 1,000 million times, we
it's
could
not
have.
happening.
But from you can imagine from the bridge. I mean, but it was a cheap thrill.
Right.
It was a cheap thrill. And so these were clear line. Obviously, they were monofilament. With the time, as 1969, 1970, Flip and I started to become a little more known, not a lot, but a little. And we started working with different companies. They wouldn't pay us, of course, but they'd give us some tackle, and that was wonderful then. And started talking to companies about making a clear line, because you couldn't see it and so on. We didn't realize at the time how many other applications there were, and at the beginning, at least for me, the companies didn't listen. Eventually, some of the companies, Scientific Anglers and Cortland and whatever, started to listen, but there was a big problem. They couldn't make the line with a mono core and clear coating that would stretch, that both materials would stretch at the same time.
And not separate.
And not separate. And they did for 10 years. I think it was 1980 or something before they wouldn't separate too frequently.
Right.
But eventually the clear line came about, floaters and sinkers and so on, which is a great line for many, many applications. And like a specialized line, it has its place. In the right place, they're wonderful. In the wrong place, they're not. And that's it.
Tell me about this photograph of you standing on the bank with this monster tarpon. Where was that caught? When and who did you catch it with?
I caught it with Flip Pallot in Loggerhead. We drove down there, and Flip had a Challenger, a 1952 Challenger, which was one of the boats we used, and we pulled over there, and within, as I recall, within a relatively short time, in the bank, over the bank, in 3 feet of water or less, comes this big wake. And it's not coming too slow. It's pushing, it have certain speed. And a fish moving real fast is not a really good fish to cast to. You know, you're hoping he's coming slow or something. But this guy is moving fairly fast, and Flip said, you better hurry up. And I don't think I can turn the boat fast enough. And of course, the Challenger is very small. Flip
tippy.
It's as tippy, much more so than a super skiff. No, this thing is a round bottom, you know, arch bottom, like an arch bottom canoe. It's very fast, but you better be on your knees, not sitting down on your knees so you don't fall off. Yes, very tippy. Anyway, barely get there, barely strip enough line out of the number 3 Finor wedding cake that I think you can see on that picture. And I had I believe an 11 weight fiberglass Fenwick that today would load perfectly with a today's 9 weights, which are a little heavy 9. That's how soft it was. Anyway, make the cast. The fish breaks on it, takes the fly and keeps going. I tighten up. I got the fish on. And, you know, we fought the fish and everything else. And
that's a classic photograph, with a old school, gaff in your hand, the hand gaff through the lower lip, holding them up out of the water. What was fishing like back then? What did you see? How many fish were there? How easy was it? And what years are we talking? We're talking in the 60s, right?
Tarpon, we fished the tarpon in the early 60s, but then a lot of us, Flip and I, that are really old-fashioned to the core, were using bamboo. We could put a hard 4 pounds on. With 12-pound tippet, always the weak spot was the rod. We learned to some extent not to high stick with a bamboo rod because it would break. So we were fighting lower on the rod, but lower on the bamboo rod, would subdue a 12-pound snook, So we were jumping tarpon and bothered them and everything, but we weren't landing tarpon. Fiberglass came in. I think Flip and I resisted fiberglass. I think we were, if it doesn't grow on trees, it's not a fly rod. Thank you very much. We were wrong about that. And fiberglass had metal ferrules then,
right?
Which you talk about a flat spot. This was a flat spot. Some of us used it back and forth, but we weren't thrilled. And then in the early 60s, 63, 62, I don't remember, Jimmy Green on the West Coast invented the internal ferrule, where you took, as you do now, 2 materials and put them together. There's no metal, there was nothing. Oh my God. For one thing was that the rod felt to us like a one-piece rod. But 2, out of California, Lima Glass, I believe it was Lima Glass, maybe Grizzly too, companies started importing or sending to Miami 1-piece 9-foot fiberglass rods, and they were wonderful too. So either the 2-piece or the 1-piece, we were into fiberglass. Bamboo rods, we never really seriously used them again for fishing. When we got into these rods, we could put pressure.
You can now catch them.
We could now catch them. We were a long ways from what you're using now, but we were putting a lot more pressure. I don't know how much, maybe 7 pounds or something. I don't know how much, but we were, and then we were catching. Then we were catching. And then with Al Pfluger, the first time Al Pfluger and I teased an amberjack in 40 feet of water with blue runners, and Al cast to him and caught a 40-pound amberjack on fly. And I chased him with a boat, and in 40 feet of water, 50 feet, he never got to the backing. I was right on top of him. And we landed him. He could do that because he had a fiberglass rod now.
You had a weapon now.
We had a weapon. The reels, we had Seamasters. I knew Seamaster. I know Bob McChristian from, I have the number 3 Seamaster S-handle red knob.
Wow.
In which, with a tool, you can take the spindle of the reel off. Have it in the back. I have a photo on my iPhone. It's red knob, curly Q. I knew Bob very, very well. Anyway, we either use that or we use a Finor number 3 wedding cake. The number 4 carried more line, but the spindle was so long and skinny, it bent, and so you had to use a number 3 Finor. 175 yards of backing. And with that, I caught sailfish. The first sailfish I caught is over there, and it's the first black Finor number 3 wedding cake. With 175 yards of backing, we caught all the tarpon, caught sailfish, caught everything.
Now you could be effective. You had a rod and a reel.
That was a tool now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What was when you ran out into the Marquesas back then? Maybe even like Loggerhead, because I fish Loggerhead a lot.
I know
you know, and I just love that place, and there are so many people there. And I just sometimes we can still get them. You can still be really, really effective, but you've got to be good. There are a few fish around that are willing to play, but I can't even imagine what you guys saw, like when you ran into the Marquesas.
The Marquesas, you ran there in the center when you went inside the island. Oodles of fish. You didn't have to be good. We used very big yellow and orange flies, or yellow and grizzly, big flies, because we believe if he sees it, he eats it. And actually, it was true. If he saw it, he ate it.
And so that was the fly design. Just make it big enough that they can find it.
That's right. And you know, had we thrown a small fly, I'm sure we could have caught them. But if they take a big fly, it's easy for us to see the fly in the water and so on. So it just worked. And I remember jumping fish until I was tired, landing many, many fish until I was tired. It was another world.
Right.
And it tapered off and tapered off. I think a big moment was when Bill Curtis came up with a polling platform, and Bob Hughes was making the Hughes Bonefisher, and now a professional, a doctor, an attorney, could buy a skiff that he could hook to his boat with a polling platform that floated relatively shallow, a foot of water or so. It's what, because the original Hughes is about a good V, and go fishing. And then the average guy could do that because we'd
be
have
effective.
Excuse me. Our boats were custom built. You took a boat, a hull that had a big, tall freeboard, and cut a foot off of it and put this. Everything was custom. And at the beginning, there were no polling platform. We would stand on the engine and pole, which the thought of standing on that little thing, and then Flip or Norman, I know it wasn't me, came up with the idea, okay, if we're going to stand in that little place, let's put an outdoor carpet on it. And they would put a little outdoor carpet, especially on the...
on the cowling of the engine?
Yeah, on the cowling. We stood on the cowling.
Right.
On the Mercury. The Black Mercury was very tall. Remember, they're
But
very,
with this pulling platform, if he fell off, at least you have a little bit of clearance before you hit the prop. But then it was so exposed.
everything. We didn't think of it. I don't remember us having any accidents on anything. But again, you're young. Accident? What accident?
You had balance back then.
We had balance back then. Now I work every day, do Tai Chi to have some balance.
Tell me about snook. You said that's always been your favorite fish. And Bill Curtis, when he told you, let's go catch one right now.
Yes. People tell you what their favorite fish is, and I know what yours is, and so on. And they explain, well, I like the tarpon because he's beautiful and he jumps. And I tell you, I like the snook because he's close to the mangroves, and I like that whirl of the brackish water, which I do. And he's always so mysterious. But I've come to the conclusion that the reason for that, excuse me, the reason is really chemistry. You like that fish, and you just do. Man.
You can make the dance.
Yes, you like that. Like you meet a girl, and it's chemistry, and you think she's beautiful. Oh, so another guy thinks she's okay. No, for you, it's not okay.
And her feet follow your feet.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
It's perfect. There's a chemistry, and I like that fish. A big snook in a foot of water cruising, 15, 18 pound snook, whatever. It makes me nervous. I mean, I just quiver. It just does something for me. Like in the bonefish world, in the old days, especially, a big mutton tailing in the flat, just that big pink tail waving around. Hello. Oh my God, but the snook is my favorite fish. I caught him in Cuba, and I already loved that fish from the beginning. She and I, I think it's chemistry.
And Steve Huff says the same. He too had snook in his blood from day one.
And he's caught it all, and he's done it all. I
Sure.
mean, what hasn't Huff done?
Well, you've written the book, Fly Fishing for Bonefish, Fly Fishing for Redfish.
Yes.
What about fly fishing for snook? How come that was never in print?
It's good question. There's not as many. It would be highly specialized because bonefish is worldwide, and redfish is from. You can fly fish for redfish from the Carolinas and even further north, all the way to Mexico. That's a long shoreline. So that book has enough of an audience. This book wouldn't have much of an audience, I don't think. So I never did, and I don't know. She's my girl, and maybe I don't want to share her.
She's like that kite. Your kite that you flew. What was the name of it? Matilda? What was the name of your
Matilda.
Matilda.
Kite, yeah.
That's the Matilda of your fishing world.
Yes. That's right.
It's interesting in that we all have mentors and heroes. And I think sometimes that term hero may be a little exaggerated. You may be influenced a lot. People ask me, who's your hero? I don't really have heroes per se. I have people that have influenced me, that have introduced me to a certain new part of my life that took on, changed my life. Those type of people. Did you have that mentor in the fishing world? Was that the early guy that your father brought to the Keys? Don, what was his name?
Don Raband.
Raband. Was he your
Well,
the influence that directed you towards this world?
He was the first person that gave me a fly casting lesson. He wasn't a good caster, super good caster, but he got me going, and I have a warm feeling for that.
Right.
He showed me Joe Brooks streamers in the days where you put chenille on the body and the wings were tied up front.
Right.
So it tangled in the wind real well. Now you put the wings at the back of at the beginning of the bend so that you don't have. But the original Joe Brooks had chenille, the wings tied up front, and then a hackle up front. Pretty, but
it foul.
It would foul. But
did you have a mentor that kind of that influenced you? I mean, he taught. So Don Ramon got you into the arc.
Yeah, Don Ramon,
and the beauty of the cast, the unrolling of the fly line, which too was my inspiration to become a fishing person. Ernie Schwiebert was casting in Aspen when I was 8 years old. I was on my bike. I had my baseball mitt. I was going to practice. I see the arc of this line. and it captivated me. And I rode over there, and Ernie Schwiebert, the great Ernie Schwiebert,
I know him. I knew
taught
him.
me how to cast. And then a number of years later, he would come into Aspen, and we were fishing the frying pan. And so Matching the Hatch obviously was the great innovative book on and tying flies and matching hatches. Here, Ernie Schwiebert, a number of years later, was sleeping on my couch. We would go up the frying pan, and I had a Vega at the time. And I would be in the river fishing, and he was tying flies on my Vega and waiting out there and handing me different flies to fish.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, those were my roots.
How wonderful.
Yeah. But it started with the arcing of a fly line. It's like, wow, what poetic majesty this is, being able to throw this string like this. But what kind of got me into this whole thing was Flip and Walker's Cay Chronicles. I was a skier in Aspen. Every Sunday morning I'd wake up to see Flip. And I didn't know him, but he kind of like, come with me on the opening of a show on this wild adventure. And to me, that was getting me, that sensation. I've got to do this. For the people that you were surrounded with, you guys were the innovators in that generation. Were there earlier fishermen that you were inspired by?
Well, in terms of heroes, or as you said,
influences?
When the four of us were together, Norman, Flip, Little John, and I, we had to invent everything. No one was teaching us. We would go in the parking lot of the University of Miami, where it had a lot of lights, I don't know now, but a lot of light at night, and cast until our arm fall off. We taught each other how to do all of that. Because we couldn't afford rods and things, rods cost $50 and more. We made our own rods. We turned our own cork. We even, on a wood lathe, turned our own wooden plugs, make chuggers and so on. We made our own flies. We had to create. We didn't have a choice. Later, I met Joe Brooks at the bar at the Rod and Reel Club in Miami Beach and got some information from him. But we had to really, and the old timers in those days, some of the old timers, they weren't well known like Joe Brooks, but that were fishing the Keys, and they didn't volunteer as much information for me as.
Why was everybody so secretive in the fishing world from day one?
Yes, very much so. Now, when I met Lee Wolf, he offered me information. He would tell me. He had his own philosophy about things, but he would tell me.
And what about Lefty? What role did he play in that era?
I was never close to Lefty. He came to Miami around the month that I met my wife, which was January '66. He ended up with Flip and so on, but we were never that close, so he wasn't an influence for me. Lee Wolf was.
Let's speak about the Miami Rod and Reel Club. That was really a big deal back then.
Yes,
if I'm not right.
Yes, it was. It started in, I believe, around 1937, and it was the place to be. That's where the anglers were, and so on and so forth.
How important was that world record redfish you caught, that 42-pound 5-ounce on 12-pound test?
It was very important for me. It broke. I forget who was Billy Pate or who had a 16-pounder, and I got the 42-pounder. I went to North Carolina invited by Joel Arrington, who was the head of travel and tourism, to catch this big redfish. And Aaron, I can't think of his name now. Anyway, the guide that was going to take us was supposed to be an expert in the flats, and I was going to be able to sight cast to these fish. So we get there, it's blowing a bit, and the guy takes a look at me, some Cuban guy with a sissy fly rod, not taking you. What? We're at the dock here. No, I got a reputation to uphold. And wow. I got a reputation to uphold and not taking you. So the guys, Joe said, look, I'm a head of travel and tourism. You're going to be all over the country. I know. I don't want that reputation when fishing with this guy. So we talked for a little while, and he thinks about it. We're at the dock. And he says, follow me. He walks out of the dock. I'm walking behind him. He's walking fast. And walk. He gets to this restaurant. And he said, Vernon Arrington was his name. Two Vernon omelets, one for him and one for me. Joel, you get whatever you want. Okay, we're having breakfast. I've always been a heavy eater, and 30 some odd years ago, believe me, I could put away a fried cow and 20 fried potatoes. And it was a 5-egg omelet that had everything. I know it had mushrooms and everything else. I polish it with bread. Somehow I passed, I crossed the river. I said, okay. So, wow, we're going in the boat. I hope he can pole well. It's a 23-foot inboard outboard, and push pole is not in the boat or in his vocabulary. I said, how are you going to approach the boat? How are you going to approach the redfish? I've been doing that for many years, boy. Don't worry. So sure enough, he putt-putts out there, and the flat is 4 feet of water or so. Okay, I expect that. He sees a school, and he says, you see the fish? I look up there. A school of maybe 40 fish swimming a foot or so under the water. They show up like a neon sign. Are you kidding? Yes, I can see them. They're way out there, but you can see them. He putt, gets upwind from them. It's good. He gets within 200 feet or so, and he shuts the engine off, and he said, sick him. I said, I can't cast that far. And he said, boy, I was told you were good. Yeah, but I have a fly rod. Oh, my God. Let's see you cast. Well, I have a 11-weight rod. I have a fly that I took my sailfish flies to cast to these big fish. All I could do, tighten the loop, concentrate, I'd throw maybe 80 feet. He said, that it? I said, yeah. Can't you just throw another 50 feet further? No. Oh, geez.
So the next question is, so what reputation are you trying to uphold?
Yeah. So little by little, working together, he gets me within roughly the 80 feet with the wind a little behind my back. I make a cast in front of the school. 2 or 3 fish parted, big fish. Immediately they move out of the side, and this big redfish comes up. I think he was 70 or 65 pounds. He followed the fly, he wouldn't take it. I felt I was going to die. He gets back again, gets back on the fish, blah, 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 makes another cast, 2 or 3 really big fish, but nothing like the fish I want now. Take the fly, I hook him, clear the line. It's open water. What can I say? I have 12-pound tippet. Where's a redfish going to go, right?
Right.
So I land the fish. I'm not thrilled. I said, this fish is not going to be big enough. He said, this is a very big fish. You're just thinking of that monster. Forget him. I can't forget her. I can't forget. Then I started looking, and I said, oh, it's a huge redfish. So we weighed the fish. Joel took pictures with his Nikon. Weighed the fish. It was 42 pounds, 5 ounces. I was very happy. I keep thinking, I still think about that fish, Andy. I still think about that fish.
Do you still redfish? Do you ever go to Louisiana to fish for those monsters over there?
Yes, I do, and I've caught very big redfish there.
That's a wonderful fishery. It's unbelievable.
Oh, unbelievable indeed. And
it's like the good old days bone fishing in the Keys in the 60s, but that's red fishing today.
They take flies very well, and they're very big, especially in the winter and so on. Yes.
I have done, I don't know how many trips around the world fishing. We had a fishing series for 7 years. We did 81 shows from around the world. And you've been traveling. How many locations do you go to and you go, it's not what they're selling, right?
Yes.
But Louisiana, I've always wanted to go there. And we went there, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, my son and I, and it was just absolutely outstanding. It's like, are you serious? Are you kidding me?
They're big, they're dumb.
They're beautiful.
The first time I went there, there were many fish, like you say, and everything. And there was a fish sitting there, maybe 25 pounds or 30, I don't know what. I make a cast. It's not really a good cast. By my standard, not by the redfish. He turned around, took the fly anyway, and I hooked him.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and the guy is
Can we do that again?
Yeah, the guy is like, that was a good cast. Okay, in Louisiana, this is in Alamorada, the guy cranks up and takes me home.
Right.
But yes, they're very easy.
Is it, how aggravating or frustrating is it, having seen this fishery decline? Yes, it's still the good old days, I believe. We still go down, we can catch tarpon, we catch bonefish, we can catch all these fish, but you've seen the epic
Yes.
fishing in Florida. What does that do to your heart?
How frustrating or anything like that? No, it's not frustrating. To me, it's tragic. I realize there are a lot more fishermen. And that has a huge disadvantage. I'll get to that in a minute. It's not just that there are a lot more. But what we've done to the environment and continue to do is water quality. I can still go to Flamingo and find a bunch of snook, but it's not the same. If I caught 4 snook fishing in the Florida Keys, fishing in Flamingo, let's say, and I caught 4 snook fishing 40 years ago, it's not the same fish. Let me tell you why. Those 4 snook years ago, you pull me, they're turtle grass, they're potholes, the water is clear. We finally see a fish. It hasn't been a really good day, but we're seeing some. I cast, I hooked them. Then we hunt for another fish. There's one laying against the shoreline. We fish. Okay. Now, there's hardly any turtle grass. There's hardly anything. What we do is we find 10 or 12 snook against one key and bleak sand and mud and so on, and we catch 4 or 5 snook. I enjoy them and so on, but it's not the same hunt. There's still some of what I'm doing, and some of the great guides still offer that, but it's not hunting all day. They're not spread out. It's not the same hunt.
Yeah, I see this. It's interesting. I just did a fundraiser for BTT up in Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
And I was telling...
founding member of BTT. I know those guys.
I know you are. And we did this fundraiser, and we were starting to talk about the difference of and how BTT got started. And I was explaining to these guys that at the time in 1996, I was fishing in the fall fly bonefish tournament with Harry Spear.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have lines in at 7 in the morning, lines out at 3. We're up on Shell Key. We're watching these fish tail. My first cast, I catch a 10-pound, 12-ounce bonefish. We put them in the live well. We're going to run them over to the dock to weigh them. Pulling off the flat, Harry says if this was going to be a perfect day, we'd catch a 12-pound fish before we get to the channel. I said, Harry, there are 2 fish tailing right over there. He spins the boat. I catch a 13-pound, 12-ounce bonefish.
Oh, my goodness.
Throw them in the live well. Now we run to the dock. We catch 6 fish in the afternoon. A long story short, right shortly thereafter that, I started to see only a few places where we could find the big fish. Oh, now we're not catching nearly as many. And then all of a sudden, I hear these guys talking about Bonefish Tarpon Trust and raising money to check out and trying to really scientifically establish why we are not seeing the fish we used to see. And initially, I thought, well, these are a bunch of old guys from Ocean Reef that can't catch fish. But they knew, they saw, because they fished a lot, they fished all the time, that this was a declining environment. And I, too, started to understand and say, and agree, yes, we have an issue here.
Indeed, indeed. And these guys, myself included, because Tom Davison called me to be one of the founding members, had a passion. And you got to have a passion for this to do that.
Right.
You got to have a passion. But yes, those big bonefish tapered off. I remember Paul Tejera, Captain Paul Tejera, tell me at his best, he caught several 14-pounder, and he caught a 15-pound something, almost 16-pounder.
In a big money event.
And big money.
Yeah.
And that world tapered off. Now, on the other hand, we're seeing a lot of small bonefish, which we need to see that. It can't just be the big fish. And maybe some of that is coming back. But
you know what's one of the most fascinating things, Chico, is understanding that since we've eliminated the commercial fishing in Cuba, we are getting the bonefish fry from Cuba that have been pushed up with the Gulf Stream, and now Key West is now prolific with smaller fish. And it was BTT and their scientists that went down and said, we need those fish as much as you need those fish.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great story. You cut your teeth on bonefish in Cuba, and now we are now going back to Cuba, your roots, to save our fishery here in Florida.
Amazing. Who would have thought of that? Who would have thought of that? I think I've always thought that the real issue is not so much to help the bonefish, and we should do that. It's about improve the bonefish's neighborhood. The turtle grass, the snapping shrimp, the little crabs, the bait fish. We need that neighborhood with everybody that lives in it, the stingray and the small sharks and the big sharks and the pinfish. And when all that food and everything in there, where all that hors d'oeuvres is at the table, is when the party continues. And bonefish and permit and other fish move in with an income and tide to feed. It's the fish's neighborhood.
You know, it's very well documented in the magazine Garden and Gun. Monty Burke wrote a story about the water quality in Florida and the issues that we have with the farmers, the sugar, the canals,
Yes.
The government, the money. Do you think in your heart that what we can do with BTT is it's about preserving, or do you think we can really reinstate good quality water in your heart? I mean, we want to hope we can get there.
To reinstate the quality of water is beyond helping the bonefish or the environment. I think the problems are up north.
Right.
The pollution, the spraying, some of the levees that don't let the water come down, even if it was good.
Right.
On top, just north of the Tamiami Trail, running east and west. When I look at that stuff, you think you understand it. You keep looking, and it gets more complex. And there's so many people that are hurting the environment. Others because it's dumb. Others because they're trying to create work, and it's incredible. But it's not just improving the bonefish, and that's good. That's one thing. But I think we need quality of water.
Yeah. I just try to think of the life I've led with a short, recent exposure to bow hunting for big elk in Colorado.
Oh.
I've been a skier in Aspen. My family moved there in 1960, and a lot of people talk about the evolution and the gravitational pull to bigger money, more development, which we've seen here in Florida. And as a skier and as an elk hunter and as a fisherman, I really can't help but say, yes, these are the good old days, because we're never going to go back. So we just have to appreciate what we have now and do the best we can to preserve what we have now for our future generations.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And when I said I wanted to go back to we got more fishermen, yes, I wish there were less fishermen so I could fish in the flat by myself, so to speak. But the problem is the amount of fishermen that we have now is 10-fold, 50-fold what it used to be. But that huge amount of fishermen don't have the passion that the few of us had then for the environment, etc. Many come in very quickly with the information on the internet. And I find a great amount of them have no respect or love for the environment. They throw garbage in the water. I don't know what they think that the outdoors are, but they treat it terribly. When I fish Miami, I try not to fish Biscayne Bay and all that through the weekend. But occasionally we do late on a Sunday or early on a Monday. I can't tell you the amount of balloons, garbage floating from birthday parties and stuff that happens on Sunday. I mean, floating, and we pop the balloons and put them on the boat and pop this and do this and
You spend your day picking up trash.
picking up trash. These people, they're in a boat having beer and drinking and swimming. I get all of that. I've done all of that. But have a garbage can in your boat. Have something to put, but they don't. They don't.
Yeah. Well, all I know is I am such a small piece of the puzzle, and we can just try to do our best to try to influence other pieces to care and to think outside the box and rely on others. And hopefully, with a band of pieces, we can become that huge piece of pie that might be effective. Like what Bull Sugar and what, the Everglades Foundation, what we're all trying to do, BTT. If we keep stepping one step at a time, hopefully we'll get there.
We have to, because we're the few left that have the passion, that have respect. Now, there are young people that have the passion. They're not as many, but they have the passion. When I teach a school anywhere in the country, when I teach a school, part of what I inject in there is the environment and taking care of it and having a love and enjoying the trip over there and enjoying where you're being pulled. Don't fish just for the moment of the strike. Enjoy the whole thing.
Fish for the sunrise, the clouds, the water.
Yeah, everything.
The trees, the bushes.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you'll be looking at an eagle when your guide is pulling and you should be concentrating. That's the moment to be hunting.
Right.
Definitely do that. But enjoy the rest of the trip. As I said before, I've been known for love to eat. And I bring a big Cuban sandwich or a big submarine, and I bring fruits and everything. And I take a civilized lunch. I really do. And I enjoy everything else.
I got to say, first, we could probably give the finger to Castro, because you have been so successful and you have been so inspiring to so many of us. And you built a sport, you built a life, and you're passionate. You said goodbye to Burger King a long time ago, and you lived a big, rich life. So congratulations on that. And to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being such a great friend.
You're welcome. I'm highly flattered, and I'm delighted to be here with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kiss your face.
West Side Story.